Hey
Okay.
guys, I'm super busy. Sometimes I just feel like I could use a little extra help.
Well, would you like someone to help you?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Okay. How about draw CAD details for you?
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah,
please.
How
I
about
don't use CAD.
how about yeah, how about create BIM objects for you?
Even better.
How about writing specs for you?
Oh,
I
please write my specs.
yeah, how about if this quote unquote air quotes, we've talked about air quotes before,
Podcasting air
could
quotes.
podcasting air quotes could do all of this work for free.
Man, I need an
Wait,
assistant. Yes.
free?
Absolutely.
What's
Free.
the catch?
And well, there is no catch, but this person who will work for free is named RCAT. RCAT is the answer, and they've already done all of this work for you.
That is
Isn't that cool?
That's a funny name for a person.
It is. It is, but that's the way it goes.
I think we need to
But
make a little mascot for our cat, like a little cat. Meow.
oh, I like that.
Maybe a
I
listener
like
can
that.
jump in here.
There we go. I know somebody who can sketch really well, but never shares much about what he sketches, though. Maybe that person can do something. Well, hey, how about if this person, RCAT, you can search their libraries for CAD, BIM, specs, catalogs, videos, and more. And all of this content is created for you free of charge. We mentioned that already.
Love
And
that
no
free.
registration required. How cool is that?
Love it.
Don't you need something like that, Cormac?
Every day of my life.
Well, hey, I got it. RCAT, just stop registering on sites for content. Come to our friend RCAT, and then you can find everything you need. I think that's pretty cool, don't you?
That sounds like a simple thing to do.
Well, hey, guess
haven't
what?
Why haven't you done that before? You should be doing that every day.
We talk about it on every episode.
That's right.
And you should know this by now. But get this, guys. So our friend RCAT, they have created a website. How cool! No, and no blinking, flashing things. It's not
What
1990s
is this website
anymore.
you say of?
That's right. It is devoted to us, the building professional, to find building product information fast and hassle-free. Don't you want that? You want that,
Thanks,
right?
our cat.
That's right. Thank you very much, RCAT. So make sure you check them out today at arcat.com.
Say that again.
That's A-R-T. No, it's A-R-C. The meow screwed me up. The arcat.com. Our friends at RCAT, go check them out and thank them for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak.
I know that our cat, at least I think, stands for like architectural catalog, but could it just be augmented reality cat?
Oh,
The AR cat.
Hmm.
the AR cat. I like
I
that.
think that we've got a new idea for Bill to go build an app for over there at Arcat. All right, thanks, Arcat. Welcome to Archispeak, the podcast that talks about what it's like to work in the profession of architecture.
Welcome to episode 128 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
So a little bit of follow up here before we get going. There's something we did on social media this week. Wanted to follow it up here on the podcast where we started a new thing, and it's called Ask Archispeak. It's just a hashtag that you can use on social media, Facebook, Twitter. I guess you could use it on Instagram if you wanted to, but we don't really have an account over there. We personally do, but not for the podcast. And it's just Ask Archispeak, so that if you have a question that you want us to talk about on the show, you can ask it that way, and then we'll put all those things up into a queue and see what happens. So hashtag Ask Archispeak in any social media. And so if you think of something, go ahead and hit us up with that, and that way you don't even have to @sign us or anything. You can just put it out there as Ask Archispeak.
But if you
And then wait, what?
I was going to say, but if you do that on Instagram, do it on like these weird architectural anomalies or something like that, because I'd love to
there
see
you go.
like what the
You could just comment it, Ask Archispeak. Yeah,
exactly.
that's a good idea.
I like that.
All right, a little bit of other follow-up just to rain on the pet lovers parades a little bit more, there is there's an equally interesting,
Some would say offensive.
Not a tweet. Yeah, not a tweet by AIA this time, but an article on Design Boom with architect designed cat shelters this time. So check the show notes for the link to that. And yeah.
So Evan hates cats now.
Now, yeah, this week it's cats. So that was it for our follow up.
So for next episode, please hide your guinea pigs.
Yeah, what animal will it be next?
Ask Archispeak. Hashtag.
So we've got something interesting here. We want to talk about team dynamics, and what we each did for this episode was we went over to the Tony Robbins website and took the DISC, which is 7 dimensions of value and motivation, and it's not really a personality test, but it's about styles, and so there's 4 different styles, the DISC, and I'm going to look for the summary here real quick because I can't remember what they are. All right, the different DISC dimensions. So D is decisive, I is interactive, S is stability, and C is cautious. So there's these 4 different categories that they kind of put you into, and it takes only about 10 minutes. If you go over to TonyRobbins.com and scroll to the bottom, there's a link in there. I guess we'll put it in the show notes too, to take the DISC profile. And you guys think it took about 10 minutes to do? Does that sound about right?
Didn't 10 to 15.
Yeah, I'd say about 15. I dwelled on a couple of things. Like, am I sure I'm like this? Maybe. No, I think I'm more like this.
So what's interesting is it doesn't ask you questions at all. It doesn't say, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself. It's not like that. And what they did, which I thought was interesting, is they just have you put 5 boxes in order several times. So the 5 boxes always change. The word in the box always change. So it's always a word, and you either associate with it or you don't. And you just place them in order from I associate with this most to associating with the last one least. Yeah. And so you go through that a series of times. There's 2 different sections to the test, and that is also reflected in the output of the test. So there's this kind of executive summary up front, and it puts you into the 4 components of behavior, and it kind of doesn't score you. It just shows you where you're strong and where you're not. And then it goes down to, I'm going to skip ahead because it gives you like a 53-page PDF output, which is very involved and I think worth reading. The next one is it gives you an executive summary of your values. So I think we'll talk real quick about the first part, but what we really wanted to get into was the second part, the value part. So go ahead.
And so one of the reasons why we took it just kind of as a group of 3, but how it can kind of translate to how you use it in the workplace. And I know we'll go a lot further into this when we kind of go through things, but it starts to kind of like highlight team dynamic.
Right.
And how you can assemble a team, construct a team, put a team together, whether or not you can somewhat find out whether or not that team is going to work well together or open to receiving ideas or things like that. So it's kind of interesting, and we'll go into it a lot further as we unbox our own DISC assessments.
Yeah, so overview, like 100,000 foot overview here. I mean, you've got different people working on a team together. Do they complement each other? Do they butt heads all the time? Right. Like, that's really what we're talking about. And this is not something that ever gets talked about in school. And I think most companies don't think at this level. And just to kind of preface this, we talked a little bit about this before the show. Teams are put together on projects because that's who's there. That's who's sitting around or available or has certain experience. Yeah. If you're a small firm, right, there's only a few people to do the job anyway. But if you're in a big firm and you've got lots of people to choose from, it mostly comes down to who's available and who has different experience types. And so people who have experience tend to work on similar projects over and over because that experience is valuable on that project. And then you also just have the wild card factor of who's not working on something else or who has the time to do this. And the level of thought really doesn't go into the success of the project being based on the complementary nature of a team or the individuals who make that up. And so that's, I think, what's most interesting about this kind of a thing. And thinking about practice and thinking about being successful on projects and doing something that you haven't done before or doing it differently this kind of thing plays into that.
Yeah.
So real quick, I mean, you guys, we've talked about this before. We talked about it, I think, even in the last episode where we talked about building on your strengths and not on your weaknesses, right?
Right.
That was really based on Strengths Finder kind of stuff. Actually, I attended a webinar that Entree Architect put on, I think it was last week, about Strengths Finder that Charette Venture Group did. And they were saying the same thing. I mean, they actually have an expert working with them who is really into Strengths Finder and how to apply that to business. And it's just interesting to me that I'm hearing this from like lots of different angles. I didn't find this disc thing on Tony Robbins' site because of that. It's just another thing that just popped up, and I thought it would be interesting. So it's weird how all these are kind of flowing around at the same time, and people are starting to talk about this. I know we're talking about it in our practice, is how do you build effective teams? And so I thought that we could talk about this as a team on Archispeak, but then also just kind of apply it to what we do.
Now, the unfortunate thing is that we just kind of recently took it, and so we didn't get an opportunity to start to overlay each other within the team and kind of figure out where the strengths and weaknesses within the team are. But just highlight one, maybe, the age of some people are like really high.
What we could do, Cormac, is we could do this like some of the presentations at MDC and just read the whole thing to our audience right now. All three of us can read our 52 pages.
Research conducted by...
There you go.
That'll put everybody to sleep.
Yeah, so we're not going to do that. Don't worry. We're going to just hit. I think what we're going to do. We talked a little bit about this. Is we're gonna pick one that we scored really high in and one that we scored really low in, and talk about those for each of us. So, but just real quick. I mean, as far as the 4 components of behavior, if you guys are looking at your PDF on page 9, where do you guys fall on that spider graph? So just to kind of paint a picture for our audience. People tend to be extroverted or introverted or somewhere in between. And then you can think about that as like the north and south pole of the graph. And then the east and west. On the east side, we've got people. And on the west side, we've got task-oriented. So are you more people-oriented or task-oriented or somewhere in the middle? And so, I mean, I'll just go real quick and then you guys can do it. I'm very centered on this graph, which I've kind of known about for a long time. Yeah. And I fall strongest on the S, which was, remind me, was stability.
Stability.
Yeah. So totally, again, that's me. I tend to not have real high highs and real low lows. I'm just kind of even a lot of the time. And so I thought, this again is kind of telling me where I fall on the spectrum of extrovert versus introvert. I've always kind of considered myself an ambivert, right in the middle. And then there's people versus task oriented, and it's easy for me to go between both of those. I can get really deep into tasks, and I can also relate with other people. I don't have, there's definitely people I can see in my office who are very task oriented and they don't like dealing with people. Then there's the other ones who are the social butterflies, right? I do, again, fall kind of right in the middle. So I like to keep my fingers on the pulse of what's going on, but I can also get shit done. So there you go.
Well, I definitely think we should put each of our graphs on the show notes because it'd be kind of interesting to see. But before I talk about mine, I'd like to hear about Neil's because mine is probably you guys are going to be like, oh, yeah, of course. But I'm curious about Neil's.
So apparently on mine, I'm mostly in the middle, a little less on the I section, which is interactive, and much higher on the D, decisive. In fact, a very, very high. In fact, on this graph, it shows me at 99, which is pretty much all the way at the D range. Yeah. And the lowest was 28 on the interactive section. The other two, I'm sort of in the middle, 53 and 67. So sort of on the middle, but definitely much more decisive and less on the interactive. So I guess I'm not the social butterfly, as you put it, Evan.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And the reason why I wanted to ask you both of yours first, because, Evan obviously led off with this, and he was the one who found this and wanted us to take this. And it's kind of interesting because, that seems to be very much kind of his nature. And if you just have listened to the show, it's interesting how this might actually show how we are, on the show maybe. And so mine looks like a kite, where I am, according to this, probably the most people-oriented introvert.
Mm-hmm. I knew you were going to be over there.
That exists.
That's all there is.
So my kite is pointing towards the S. I am very firmly into that category. I'm both introvert and people, whereas I think 25. So I'm just the opposite to you, Neil. Which which is why I wanted to hear yours first, because it's kind of who we are in a way. So like yours was like what, 20 something to the S and more towards the D. Is that what you said?
Mine was 53 to S, but 99 to D.
Okay.
Oh yes, ours are.
Yeah. So I have 25 to D and 99 to S, and so it's just kind of very interesting.
I'm at 88 on the S and 42 on D. So yeah, those on that axis, Cormac, you and I are a little more aligned. You're more towards the S than I am, and then I'm more toward the middle between the both of you, I guess I should say. So I just pasted mine into the chat box, and then Neil did too, so we can kind of see our overlays. So yeah, I think again the interesting thing here is to evaluate yourself based on, like, know your strengths, right? So you know that where you fall, and it's good to complement that with other strengths and not try to bolster your strengths. I mean, we only have so much time in this world. We can't be perfectly well-rounded. So how do we, we'd spend all of our time.
That's not what I wanted.
Nope. We'd just be spending all of our time working on stuff we hate to try to become more well-rounded. So I think it is kind of worth it to just play to your strengths here and work and bring that value to your team. So the next section, which is really where we wanted to spend the meat of the conversation, is page 30 of the output PDF, which is the executive summary of your values. And these are the 7 dimensions of value and motivation. So what's interesting about this is what do you value the most and what are you motivated by? And that, to me, is really where we can start to fine-tune who is on a team. Because if you don't know this kind of stuff, you could definitely have character clashes. You could definitely have the deck stacked too high in certain dimensions and not well enough in lower ones. So, for instance, you could have, too many designers on a team competing for design aesthetics and not enough technical expertise. And so that's really where I think we want to start to look at building teams out based on not just what your job title is, but what you actually find meaning in doing when you're at work. And that's where I think this takes it to that next level, is because it really talks about things that you value that are beyond just job type bullet points. So if we've got aesthetics, economics, individualistic category, political, altruistic, regulatory, and theoretical.
What's interesting about all of those is that it gives you, I don't know how they define norm. Maybe it's norm based on the average of everybody who's taken
that's what they say.
Test.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I hadn't had time to see that yet, but and then a standard deviation, higher or lower for each one. So that I found kind of interesting, because for the most part, I'm either within the standard deviation or way outside of it, on one side or the other.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at their little sine wave that they've got rolling through the middle there, where the norm is, on the bar chart, and I'll also paste my my spider graph in for this one so you guys can see it as well. But I tend to be much more or less than, there's only a couple I even get close to on the norm. Even though I probably, and I'll you can kind of see mine there. Like I'm either up quite a bit higher or quite a bit lower on most of them, with the exception of economic, and political. So, and what I think is interesting on this is scoring high and scoring low. It's not about the score. It's about what you believe in, what matters to you. And so what this is telling you is, this, like, aesthetic on mine really matters, and individualistic really matters, and altruistic and economic don't matter as much to me. And that, again, is not a bad thing. It's just important to know, because you don't want to be put in a position where you are responsible for something that has high values in things you don't care about, because somebody else will do that job much better than you. And so, again, kind of playing to your strengths. So I thought what we would do here is each person take one of their highest scoring ones and talk about, if we scroll down in the document, it kind of tells you a little bit about that. We can just hit a few high points. We'll kind of go round robin here, and then we'll go back and pick one that we're really low on. Because what's interesting is for each one of these categories, they also kind of give you some advice on what you could do to improve if you wanted to. So anyway, I think you guys were ready to jump into that.
One thing is interesting.
I
was just going to say, one thing I find interesting, Evan, in looking at your bar chart here, is that you as a designer, and knowing you a little bit, I noticed your theoretical side is way high. And
aesthetic, theoretical are both very high. Yeah.
Yeah. That totally makes a lot of sense, knowing you. So.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's telling us anything we don't already know, right, about ourselves.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting is it's telling other people about us. And so that's where this communication really starts to be valuable, is when you're starting to look at a team or different people and how they could complement each other. And this is kind of data about that. It's not just how I feel or this is how I am. And people don't really talk about that kind of stuff very much. They just talk about who's available. They just talk about what skills do you have. They don't really talk about what do you really care about? Where do you want to grow on this project? And I think that those are the kinds of things that are actually going to make a difference in the architecture that we produce for our clients, rather than the same kind of output time after time after time, which is really an exercise in efficiency versus the creative endeavor that's architecture. So for what also is kind of neat about this is it starts to make you look at, does the environment that I work in support me in this way? Or do I need to switch that up? Do I need to go somewhere else? Are there adjustments I can make where I am that will make me happier? So you guys ready to jump into your maybe a high strength?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Sure.
I'm going to go with the highest one, which is individualistic, I think is what it is. So I got to find it here. Economic, it's after economic. Okay. So individualistic dimension. So for me, so many who score in this range like to invent new things, design new projects, and develop new ideas. So I scored a 76 in this category, and I scored a 75 in aesthetics and theoretical. So a tie for second place. And so all of these things totally speak, like you were saying, Neil, to my kind of designer nature. It says I thrive in a team environment, and I can sometimes surprise others with spontaneous ideas or responses. I have a tendency to push the envelope to the max in situations where winning is desired. So yeah, I'm competitive for sure. And
winning.
# winning. And you may enjoy maintaining the image of being a maverick at times. I think that's hilarious, but probably true.
It's probably
so
true.
Key strengths. I bring creative ideas. I have a desire to be an individual and celebrate differences. Totally. I'm not afraid to take calculated risks. You enjoy making presentations to small or large groups and are generally perceived as an engaged presenter by your audiences, and you realize that we are all individuals and have ideas to offer. I find this, for a quick 15-minute exercise, totally accurate. I think that's so interesting. Okay, so the next page on this one, motivational insights. So this is what's interesting, because now it starts to talk about the environment that you work in. I work with an idea, develop it, and run with it for a while before making a judgment. Okay, so as a designer, yeah, I'm encouraged to explore multiple ideas without latching on and saying this is the solution, because that's what we do. I mean and I continually push that. There's definitely people in the office who think the first idea is the only idea or the best idea, and I'm totally not that person. I prefer an environment where I have space to demonstrate my unique contributions to the team. I create an environment that provides security while encourages taking appropriate risks. And I'll skip some of these other ones. I don't want to go through every bullet point. But it does say that I should attempt to provide enough creative space to express my uniqueness. So again, talking about my environment, what does my environment need to be for me to enjoy it? I should allow for some experimental or non-routine types of options, and I should link the benefits of learning new things to personal ability to enhance my performance. And then the last page, so there's 3 pages for each bar. The last one is improvement insights. So this is that part where I was saying, if you wanted to improve, get even better at this, this is something worth looking at. So sometimes my very unique approach does not always result in complete success and may sometimes cause conflict with others if sensitivity is not used. My potential value clashes with others may be reduced through increased awareness and sensitivity of the needs of others. I may need to remember that my good ideas aren't the only good ideas, and I may need to listen more to others and speak less as I monopolize this section of the podcast.
Yes. Shut up, Evan.
I'll stop now, but
you've got enough.
I think that is all good advice, and I took another profile test recently for something else, and it was basically saying the same thing. So good insight for me, and it's good to read it about yourself and get this kind of self-critique.
Yeah.
Because you're like, wait, am I really like that? And then you do the honest assessment. And you're like, oh yeah, I actually sort of am. And then
just ask your significant other or ask somebody you trust. Does this sound like me? And then just watch their heads bob up and down.
So I'm actually glad you said that because as I was taking it, my wife was sitting next to me, and she was like,
she was judging the order you were putting.
as I was like ordering them.
I think one of the.
She didn't have to say yes or no.
She was like, One of the things that it's made sure to tell you before you started the test was make sure that you're putting these in the order of what you are, not what you want to be.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that was the thing that's what kind of, to me, drew it out a little bit longer. Because I really think I'm this, but, I feel like I'm more this too, though. And so really in that one, I had to be a little bit more introspective and kind of look at the reality of me and not really just, kind of like the perception of me.
So we learned the true Cormac.
So I think that was...
Yeah. So again, that was a mouthful for me to go through, and that was only one bar. So that's why we're not doing this for everyone, for each of us. So okay.
Exactly.
So Neil, you want to go pick a high?
Sure. So the 3 highest ones, actually 2, I also scored in the 70s on 2 of them, aesthetic and political. And then actually followed closely by individualistic, which was at 65. So those are definitely the 3 highest categories. So if we wanted to go to political,
I think that's appropriate.
So
well,
and it's not really a shot. It's like, think about a lot of the things that you do, not just your job, but you are involved with a lot of things.
Planning commission.
For the community, the planning commission and things like that. So, it makes sense for you to kind of highlight this one.
So the basic definition that they give for very high political doesn't always necessarily mean office, elected office sort of political, but it says you are a very strong leader and able to take control of a variety of initiatives and maintain control. So that's the basic outline for that.
Oh, then scratch all the others.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
But it says as you dive into the first page of the description, it says this drive is to be seen as a leader and to have influence and control over one's environment or success. Competitiveness is often associated with those scoring high in this motivation. So this is very interesting. Yeah, it's totally me. I totally agree. I'll have my wife read this. I'm sure she'll be, yes, I agree. But the general traits for this one is you enjoy a feeling of accomplishment and getting a difficult job done on your own. You enjoy winning, and let's see what else. This is interesting, though. You are accountable for your actions and decisions and are ready to take credit or the blame. And some of the key strengths here are you have a strong buck stops here approach to business and getting things done. You're very high energy level to work hard at meeting goals, and you accept struggle and hard work towards a goal. And this, as you mentioned, Evan, this is very much a good insight into a lot of the things that I would totally agree with about me.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this is I scored a 40 on this and you scored a 75. But what's interesting is my motivational insights. It says, don't forget you have the ability to be a stabilizing agent. And if you think back to the beginning where we had the 4 quadrants, I was the stable. I was heavy on the stable. So again, like I don't seek to be the one in power, but I do bring balance to the force here. So
and that's totally true because when it comes to figuring out things like scheduling our recordings and making sure we're all on time, who's doing that? That's me, right? I'm always, hey, what are we talking about? When are we meeting? Setting the calendar. Right. I am the leader. I do those things.
So I kind of like the analogy you just used, Evan, because I'm trying to think of what color lightsaber would you guys be carrying?
Did not see that coming.
Neil's might just
red.
This is the red bar,
and that's the red bar.
Exactly.
I'm going to go green. I'm going.
So let's see.
Yeah.
All right. So what's yours, Cormac? I can guarantee yours is not blue after seeing your bar chart there.
Yeah. No. So actually, if you look at all 3 of our bar charts, all of us scored pretty highly on aesthetics, and that goes without saying because look at the job we're in. And so look at the sensitivities that we have to that. So that makes, perfect sense. So I actually wanted to go to the second highest one, which is no real surprise, is individualistic dimension. And that I scored a 78 on in comparison to 83 for aesthetics. And then shortly followed thereafter with altruistic. And then everything else kind of just tumbles from there.
Yeah. You're bipolar,
but,
for sure.
This one is the drive to be socially independent and have the opportunity of freedom or personal expression, to stand apart from the crowd. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That is me. With general traits of you like the freedom to work your own area. You experience a feeling of accomplishment and being recognized for a complete and thorough assignment in a creative way. But it says, key strengths are you desire to be individual and to celebrate differences. You bring creative ideas. You realize that we are individuals and have ideas to offer. Interesting because I was sitting around a table the other day doing kind of a debrief. My position on the project, I'm kind of like the collector of everybody's ideas and distilling them and kind of making sure people are doing the right things, or, pulling in all of the ideas and making sure that I envelop all of this stuff into one project kind of thing and a holistic approach. And so I was thinking about the way everybody else kind of almost a cat herder of individual ideas. So it sort of makes sense, and I'm not too gregarious, I suppose. Some of the motivational insights for individualistic dimension are being patient and allowing for expression of your uniqueness and sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nod in my head.
Got to kind of, yeah. You should be allowed freedom to make your own decision about how an assignment should be completed. Yeah. That's the interesting part, that, individualism, how it kind of clashes with a little bit of professionalism sometimes, which is interesting. See, your training and learning insights. Your learning and professional development activities should be flexible, have a wide variety of options. You should attempt to provide enough creative space for you to express your uniqueness. Yeah, that's why I wear funky colored socks.
It's not the space they're talking about.
I know. Continual improvement insights. Sometimes your very unique approaches do not always result in complete success and may sometimes cause conflicts with others if sensitivity is not used.
Interesting.
You may remember that your good ideas aren't always the only good ideas.
Sounds similar to mine. Yep.
Whatever. What? You know what? You need to shut up. Because my idea is the only ideas.
Let me send you my favorite emoji that I send you.
Yeah. So that was actually, it's interesting because that you go read through these, and I think what might be interesting, each of us, if we put in the show notes a little bit, a couple of snippets about some of our highs and lows, it'd be interesting to kind of see what other people think, just those who know this or those who listen to us, and see if they agree with some of the highs, and the lows of things.
So what's interesting to me about yours specifically is you are a designer trapped in a project management role. And I find that, so building on your strengths, knowing that you score very high in aesthetics and individualistic, what can you do about that? Because I honestly do feel like you are very good at managing projects, but I think that's because you've developed those skills over time. And now it's almost like you're kind of trapped doing that because you've shown so much proficiency there. Whereas you would bring the most value to the team in other ways. And I know that you do some of that other stuff because I've seen what you do, and I know the stuff you're working on. It could be just the stuff that you share, obviously, but I don't have a camera over your desk or anything.
I think the dynamic that I have, especially at Air St. Gross, is trending more towards. First, when I was hired, they saw in my portfolio and stuff that I have a designer background, but they were really hiring me for a more management, technical, project architect, kind of lead the project, bring in your technical abilities because we need that for this particular project. And I think more now that I've been on my new project, I've had a lot more insight and discussion on the design. Now, I can't say, well, I, designed this or anything, because that's, the furthest thing from the truth. One, because it's more of a team effort, as well as I came into the project after another project architect, project designer kind of left, and they were the ones who were kind of responsible for the way the building somewhat is. And then since I've come on board, like I said earlier, I was taking this, and it looked like 5 different designers had a part in this. And basically my role has been, let's clean it up. Let's try to make it one coherent building. Let's try to figure out how to unify all of these different ideas, and mine being one of those 5. So it was really trying, and that's pretty much been my role. Keep the project moving along, keep the project moving towards all of these different deadlines and milestones, but also advance the design and make it cohesive, make it coherent, make it unified. And that's what I've been doing and bringing to the table. And so slowly but surely, it's going to take a while to kind of, get firmly into, okay, this guy, having the confidence with the firm to know that I can bring as much level of design as I can, project management to it. So, it's a bit of patience, and I think it'll be there.
So then, kind of talking about Neil, your score on your political, it totally makes sense to me that you're leading a team on your projects, and you've got younger teammates, and they are looking for that mentorship and leadership on the team, and it seems to be a good fit.
Yeah. That's more where I wanted to be, and what I'm doing. I do find that on this, in the continual improvement insights, it says you may need to be more sensitive to the needs of others on your team. You may be perceived as one who oversteps authority at times. So, I like a lot of where this has me at, and it makes a lot of sense. So it doesn't surprise me, but I think what's interesting is that it does point to where I feel most comfortable and doing. And sometimes that does create conflicts, but it is who I am. And it's what I do.
What's interesting about that is, the being sensitive to others part is, you've admitted that, it's been a struggle sometimes to kind of go from being a sole practitioner for as long as you were to now coming back to the firm and working with others, but more specifically working with kind of like the younger ones, and now you're getting into a comfort level where you are relying on them as kind of an integral part of the team and not just saying, oh, these millennial kind of things. Whereas when you first came in, it was just like, oh, these millennials. But now you've gotten to the point where you really have kind of shown that your leadership and compromise and things like that have kind of risen back up. And I think in a way, and it might have been similar to like, when Evan was working for himself and I was for myself, that it's kind of hard to come back to a firm and not be judgy about the way other people do things when you've been doing them for yourself for so long.
How other people do things,
Yeah, so am I.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
So am I. But I think you're right, Cormac, in that it takes a little time of adjustment and growth to understand how best to work with others and compromise and be sensitive to their needs, everybody's needs. Well, so, and it's just part of doing the job and being aware of, and this is partially why we're talking about this, is to be aware of your strengths or weaknesses so that you can act accordingly on them. Yeah. And not be mystified by why do I not like this or why do I like this?
And picking your battles, I think,
is your battles,
a big thing here, because this shows you again where your strengths are, so you know where you can focus and where you just need to kind of leave it alone, back off, let somebody else take the lead on something else that is their strength but not yours.
Right.
Well, I'm wondering what would have been different. Say if you would have taken this.
That's an interesting idea.
A couple months into. Yeah. What would have been different if you would have taken this particular test a few months into the transition from working for yourself to working for somebody else, and what that looked like? I mean, I remember the kind of like the struggle that you were having, and it would have been interesting to just see if there was any shift in the dynamics, because I think you've always been there with like the leadership and things like that. But at the time, it might not have been as apparent, because I don't know if you were ready for the compromise or ready for the role of leadership at that point, because it was just kind of stress filled.
Sure.
And now that you've kind of you've been in there, you're kind of ingrained into the system and stuff, and worked on several different teams, and now it's kind of like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is the role I want, and so it shows. I mean, when you've taken the thing and you've ranked so highly in political, it's about the leadership, and it's about the guidance, and about even to the point of mentorship and things like that. So, it's kind of interesting.
It's always been something I've been interested in, so I'm not surprised that I scored the highest in this one.
All right, let's go to our low, and I'm going to go with altruistic. I scored a 23. This was my lowest.
Which... That's really kind
well, when I read it, it's interesting because so I'm not going to read every bullet point again, but I'm going to just pick a few from maybe the top ones from each page. So it says, I'm somewhat guarded at first with others, maybe in part as a result of being burned in the past and not wanting to see it happen again. Totally me. I definitely don't just open up and wear all my emotions on my sleeve, and yeah. So and then it says, I expect a strong work ethic from others because I demonstrate that myself. Totally true. And I think this is something, and if I go down to my next page here, if I look at my my motivational insights, it says you should try not to place too much burden for coaching or counseling duties. And this is really interesting because this is definitely something that we have identified in the office, because we have a lot of design talent in our studio that some people are more wired for dealing with a younger staff under them. And so I think this kind of plays into what we were just talking about with Neil, where like that is not something that I am good at or want to do. And we've identified that, and we've taken away that responsibility from me so that I can go pursue other things that really do interest me. So in my case, it's like the whole tech side of architecture. So I get to really spend my time focusing on that. and not doing all of the updates with the younger staff all the time, and because it's just not something I'm really good at. And so again, like this is a perfect kind of data backing up what we were all feeling already. And so I feel like, okay, man, that's just great, because it really makes me feel like we are paying attention to these intuitions that we have. So I think that's pretty cool. And then let's see what's the last page here. So this one also says you might benefit from being more sensitive to the personal needs of others. I feel like I'm a pretty good listener, and I know that what it does say in one of the other, like in the summary at the very end, it does say that I'm a very good listener, probably one of the best. But I guess what it's saying here is that I just need to be a little bit more sensitive to that. So just hearing it is one thing, but actually putting it into action is another thing. So. And then this is also echoing something from this other profile that I had done. It says you may gain personally by helping others gain personally as well. Because one of the things I don't do is I don't volunteer my time for other things. And it talks about that in one of the other dimensions. So they got me on both. It's backing itself up. You know, I could gain more by helping others more is what it's saying. And personally, for me, I do that at home. That's really my family life. And I feel like that with my kids, I'm trying to create as much opportunity for them as I can. And I get a lot of reward out of that. But I think what it's saying here is, you know, throughout everything that you do, I could gain more by helping others more.
You know, it's funny. It's just on this particular trait, both you and Neil scored relatively close. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I scored much differently. And it says the very first general trait is, it's better to give than receive. Yeah. That's my philosophy.
I don't believe in that.
And I was just like, you know,
clearly I don't either.
I like to get.
It was my lowest scoring category.
Yep, me too.
At 31. So
I'm lower. I'm lower of 23.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
wow.
Neil, why don't you pick a different one since I went with that one?
Sure. And I'm gonna leave one of them for Cormac because I know he scored very low on that one.
Yes, please leave it, because that one is kind of close to low for you. You got another one that might be just a little bit higher, but no, I believe that that particular category should be reserved for me.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So what's interesting is that that category was 34 for me, so a little bit higher than the altruistic. But the other two are very similar. So I'm going to talk, neck and neck. They're 40 and 38. So the one that is 40 for me is the regulatory dimension. And that one is the regulatory drive indicates one's drive to establish order, routine, and structure. I think my kids would think I would score off the charts on that one. But this motivation to promote rules and policies, a traditional approach, and security through standards and protocols. So I don't know. Wow, I'm actually kind of surprised I kind of scored somewhat lower on this one. Although when I look back I'm going to go back to the main page, I fall a little bit higher than the norm, but within the standard deviation, but on the higher side of the standard deviation on regulatory. And then the other one that I'll mention here is theoretical, which I scored just below the standard the norm, but within the standard deviation, but on the lower side. Mm-hmm. So I guess that sort of trends the way I would probably consider myself, which is a little higher on the order and routine and structure side, and maybe a little less on the theoretical dimension, which they define as the drive to understand, gain knowledge, or discover the quote unquote truth. So I definitely agree with both of those, a little higher on one, maybe a little lower on the other. But the general trait on the regulatory has, let's see, you move freely and effectively between the rebels and the rule followers in the group. That's kind of interesting. I guess that sort of means I can relate to both sides of different sorts of arguments, which is probably very true for me. And then let's see, another one. You strike a good balance between respecting individual needs and those of the group. Tend to be balanced and stable. I think my kids would totally disagree with that one. I think I should have my kids evaluate this for me, and I think they're going to have a very different sorts of outcome for this.
I scored similarly to you, actually a little lower, 26 in this one, and I think it nails it for me because it talks about preferring new ideas to old. It talks about disliking existing rules because they get in the way of effective solutions to problems, and it's totally how I feel. I'm constantly rewriting the rules based on the latest information.
Right. I like, but the motivational insight on this one is you can help bring order out of chaos without going overboard. And I can be the mediator between those who support the old guard and those who want revolution. I
feel like Gen X that's the burden right there.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And then some of the continual improvement insights. You might benefit from exerting opinions freely in discussions or direction and planning. And you could take a firmer stand on team issues involving dissenting opinions. Yeah, that's true. I don't do either of those very well when it comes to groups. I tend to sit back a little bit more and let them battle it out, but and not take an opinion on that. So. So those are the two of mine that are probably but within the norm, right? So I think that's pretty good.
on
which is
my continual improvement, it says you should consider resisting the urge to push the envelope just for the sake of pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I think is interesting as you've read off some of the bullet points, some of them are the same as what I had, but I noticed a couple of times I was following along on the same sort of page that you were on, and they were different. Yeah. So it
is more custom to you,
right?
Because
it is very much so.
It's because they're relating to the other ones, right? So there are relations between these different bars, and because I scored high on one and low on this one, then I get a certain set of bullet points, and vice versa.
Right. So Corm,
which is interesting because I scored higher on these, which is kind of funny that both regulatory and theoretical, because I scored so highly in individual. It's a little interesting to kind of say I'm a rule follower and a rule breaker all at the same time. But the one general trait on the regulatory that I think probably best defines my attitude towards this is you take personal responsibilities very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's
and I think it says something similar. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, and if other people don't, it drives you nuts. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
So Cormac, what? So go ahead and take it away.
So drum roll.
Let's finish it out with what looks to be the lowest score on any bar out of any one of us.
It quite possibly could probably be. They're like, holy crap! Anybody score this low in that particular category? Ever?
What was your score in this one?
So if anybody has listened to this show ever, and in many of the conversations, this will definitely be a no shit statement as well. So what did I score the lowest in? The economic dimension. How low did I score? Well, I guess the average norm for things are in the 40 range, and you can either trend a little bit higher or trend a little bit lower. Well, apparently I am trending in the basement.
Yeah, you're
I think it's the sub basement,
third level down of the parking garage.
Exactly. That one that you have to try to squeeze your car into up against the retaining wall and all of the other cars. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there's where I parked. And can't see it. So, economic dimension. I got a 3.
Wow. Holy
Shocker.
Smokes. A 3.
Shocker and surprise.
Is it possible?
They talk about they talk about this dimension examines the motivation for security for economic gain and to achieve practical returns. So as anybody's ever heard, my statement of I don't do this for the money, well, apparently Tony Robbins
You were
agrees.
not lying.
I'm not really.
So
I was
ASG
really
doesn't
not
even
lying.
need to pay you to show up every day, and you'd still be
Oh,
there.
yeah, no.
You would be there for the project, for the team. Yeah, you're a giver.
I still need. I still need. Well, that's funny because if you look at the altruistic and even the regulatory, it is that's kind of what it determines, is that I'm a giver and not a taker kind of thing. But again, when I say that I'm not into it for the paycheck, that really is because they say since this value area helps determine one's money motivation, the results indicate that you may be motivated by more by other things other than a high paycheck, although that may still be important. Well, a paycheck's important. I need the gas money to get to work because I do commute an hour.
Just as long as
so there's that. Yeah, in as weird as that sounds, yeah, but so it's like for you, using money or materials as a yardstick to measure or impress others is not important. It was, although this one did kind of give me quite the chuckle. It's like your score in this range indicates a lower interest in materialistic things, or that you have already achieved a level of material security.
Contentment.
No,
I think it's the first one.
yeah, I'm just content with the poverty, and I'm okay with that. It's all right, I mean, that's not what motivates me. It's the people, man. So it says key strengths. You are sensitive and responsive to people's side of work-related activities. You see a wider spectrum of the picture and not just the economic view. It's just probably why I'm working for somebody else now and not still working for myself.
I was thinking that, like, this totally plays into that. It does. Like, you can't ignore this.
Exactly.
Actually.
Yeah, it totally is. And that, and so the conversation that I think we should maybe follow up with is just, so why do we assemble teams the way we do? Because obviously they're not going to put me in charge of the economic security of the firm. They're going to put me in charge of things like, project delivery and, the project quality and things like that, because that's what I care about. I care about how things are rather than what we earn off of that. And that's to a fault, obviously, because, look at the example is that I worked for myself and now I don't work for myself. Well, it's because I place a different importance.
But on a project, you are very responsible for a budget, and that
True.
that the project won't get built if you don't meet the budget, and so you have to come up with creative ways to solve the problem while maintaining the budget. And so, I think that
this is very true.
But that's definitely a team player,
Evan.
What's that?
I was going to say that's a different category than caring about the money. Right? Or doing it for the money.
True.
I think being responsible for the budget is a different category than why he's scoring low in this particular category.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying though is
it's
just not off the radar completely, right? It's one of those things that we all know that we have to deal with, which is totally different than in school. There's no budgets there. We never taught to design within a budget. At least I wasn't. And now, like, that's the main factor, right? You've got
that's
so
because you
much.
Went to Pomona.
Yes. Okay. Give me all the examples where you had to design to a budget.
Wow. I do like this. I do like this, and I feel that this is very much a thing of mine. Is in the key strength. It says you rarely, if ever, look at a project with a "what's in it for me" perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, I think that we've kind of underlined the fact that it's really good to know this stuff about yourself so that you can play to your strengths. And to me, how do you start to communicate that within the teams that you work on and the leadership that you deal with all the time? And I think that this is a great data set for you to say, no, really, like this is the project is going to suffer if you put me into that position, or the project is going to excel because you put me into this position. And I feel like this kind of thing, I really want the other people on our teams to take these so that we can just have these conversations and understand each other even better. Because one of the downfalls, I think, to today's practices that I've seen is that we don't know each other that well. I mean, people want to get home, they want to do their thing while they're at work, they want to put their head down and get the stuff done and kick butt doing it. But there has been a big loss, and we've talked about this many times on the podcast before, where just that personal, because we're all so glued to the screens all the time. Not just in the office, right? Everywhere, cell phones. I mean, everybody is very much looking at these other ways of communicating rather than the face-to-face. And because of that, we just don't know each other that well. And so I think this is a great basis to help get us to know each other better.
Agree. I totally agree with you. Understanding other people and understanding what interests them, what doesn't interest them, where they're strong, where they're not strong. It will really help enrich as a team, as a project manager coming into a project and say, looking at the collection of the team, and rather than assembling a team for a project based off of, oh, you've got time available here, I'm going to throw you to this project for a little while till we find another one, and kind of changing the dynamic. Well, the more you change the dynamic of the team and it doesn't gel or mesh together, it has a huge adverse impact on the quality of the project and what the end result is going to be. I mean, everybody wants to try to come up with the most professional and, correct decision. But, when you're starting to throw people at projects and they're not quite, they don't fit in with the project, or they don't fit in with the team, or, they're only kind of there as a drive-by or things like that. Sometimes it either slows the progress of the team down because, you're trying to catch people up to speed and kind of like work within their limitations or work within their, strengths and stuff like that. And it really kind of demotivates other people when things like that happen. And so then, to me, I can see it, that I can see when a project falters because you look at the end result and you're like, they didn't really think through that one now, did they? And, you could probably say, okay, when did they document this particular thing? And then you look at your staffing and stuff, and you say, oh, well, that was when this happened or this happened.
You can see those factors,
Okay, that makes sense. You're like, you look at the data, you're like, oh, okay, gotcha.
I think,
they should have rethought
what
that
this
one.
really talks about is the value of stacking the deck in all these categories instead of stacking them towards one category. We all know that teamwork doesn't work when it's one person trying to pull the whole team. Teams function the best when you've got a deep bench that has skill in every area so that people can thrive at what they're really good at. And so I think what would be interesting is to overlay these graphs with each other when you've got certain teams, people who are available, overlay these graphs together and see where the holes are, because that's really what you want to look at. If it's too much, too high in aesthetics and too low in politics for everybody across the board, then you're going to have some issues. If you have too many extroverts on a team and too many introverts on a team, you could see how you're going to falter in certain ways, because you really do want to have a well-balanced team as much as you can. And so how difficult is this when you're off and you really are on your own? I mean, and you actually have to do everything by yourself. I mean, that's really where the struggle is. And you don't have the resources available to kind of fill in those holes. So you want to look outside of your firm and hire people to consult in those areas if you can afford to. I mean, you're going to make everybody happier if you can do that.
Right.
So, I think it's really interesting. So thanks for going along with this topic.
That was fun. I mean, it was interesting. It was kind of eye-opening.
All right.
Neil, you want to take us out?
Sure, absolutely. So before I take us out, just throw out a reminder to use the Ask Archispeak hashtag to Ask Archispeak.
That's right.
So make sure to do that. And then also, too, we want to thank our episode sponsor, Arcat. Make sure you check out all the features they offer over at arcat.com. And do you want more Archispeak? Visit Archispeak. Yep. Cormac does.
I got enough.
Make sure you visit archispeakpodcast.com, where you'll find links to our catalog of episodes. And while there, make sure to sign up to receive our show announcements. And by doing so, you'll be notified when an episode goes live. And it will include links to everything we mention on this show or any of our shows, including this Tony Robbins test you can take.
Yeah, do it.
And then absolutely, make sure you do it. And so also, to stay in contact between episodes, visit our Facebook page or hit us up on Twitter, on the socials. And you can find links to all of those accounts over at archispeakpodcast.com. And tell a friend about the show and say subscribe to everyone. And thanks for listening.
See ya.
See you guys.
I joined the choir to sing. They're all competing for some other thing. I joined the choir to sing. I joined the choir to sing. They're all competing for some other thing. I joined the choir to sing. Got started without